So to start with, we're going to go through a real brief PowerPoint presentation before we spend the majority of our time within the live software. In this presentation, we're going to cover the top reasons to consider kicking your paper habit. So to start with, the overwhelmingly #1 reason to kick that paper habit is to become more efficient and help drive efficiency within your operations. Now with PaperSave, we do that many ways. First and foremost, with our core solution, which is document management, really helps eliminate the 20 to 30% of your day that's typically spent filing, searching, and retrieving information. That's typically files in filing cabinets. Also, we've noticed a trend lately is some people are scanning things and may have things on network folders. Network folders can be a little cumbersome as well because you have to remember exactly where you put it when a document could go in multiple folders. So we eliminate that 20% of the time that's spent filing, searching, and retrieving documents, as well as the 1 out of every 10 documents that you go to retrieve that is either lost or misfiled. So you spend a tremendous amount of time searching for information when you need it. Now, PaperSave information is really just a click away from any Dynamics record. We do integrate with over 70 different cards and transactions within Dynamics GP. We also integrate with numerous ISV products as well. PaperSave also allows you to improve customer service because you have all that information available at your fingertips. If you need a document to send it to a customer or send it to an auditor, you can easily retrieve it, and then within a button you can email it directly to somebody. Now, 40% of the time that you spent during an audit is spent pulling information out of those filing cabinets. Now, with PaperSave, we have several great ways that we can pull groups of documents within a few clicks. For example, we have the integration with a smart list. So if your auditors come in and they're looking for all of the supporting documents that were coded to a certain GL account, within a few clicks you can run that smart list, and then a couple more clicks you can pull all of those supporting documents out of the system. And we'll take a look at that great feature. So lots of cost considerations for managing the paper. It costs on average $20 to file a document, and when we think about the 1 out of every 10 documents that is lost or misfiled, it costs us about $220 to replace a lost or misfiled document. Now, if we take that up to a larger statistic, it costs us about $25,000 to fill a 4-drawer lateral file cabinet as well. Reason #2 to kick your paper habit is to help streamline and automate traditional paper-based processes. So we can help streamline the matching process. And that's because we inherit the relationships between Dynamics GP records. So if you use purchasing and you create a PO and then you create a receiver and then you create an invoice and then you cut the check, those transactions inside a GP are already related to one another, and we extend that relationship down to the document level automatically. We can also help automate and streamline that workflow process around your approvals. So we can give you insight to where documents are. No longer is it just paper floating around your office. And we can allow you to redirect documents in process as well. So that's really going to help reduce monthly close cycles as well. We can help automate that filing process. So whether you're using our scan first capture method or auto entry method, it is going to file that document for you at the same time that you're creating that transaction inside of Dynamics GP. Now, so for some of y'all who may be looking at higher levels of automation, PaperSave also has a tool called OCR, or Optical Character Recognition. And that's where we can electronically grab information off of a document like vendor, date, dollar amount, invoice number, PO number, even line item details to help reduce, if not eliminate, the data entry required to create that transaction. And that's, of course, an add-on module, and you are always able to add to the solution at any point in time. But we will definitely take a look at that today as well. Now, reason number 3 to kick that paper habit is to really help connect and collaborate. Right? We can connect people to the process and even connect people around your offices if you have remote offices, and allow them to play a role in that approval process. We can receive documents from those remote locations as well. So that allows those offices to contribute into the system, eliminating any of the time and the cost traditionally spent with shipping documents between locations. Now with PaperSave, those approvers are also able to participate within the workflow process, and there they can even do it within a mobile device, such as a tablet or a cell phone. So the obvious starting point when we think about a paperless environment is AP, primarily because it's a very paper-intensive process, and it's really riddled with a lot of overhead costs. You know, there's a cost to file a document, cost to maintain the filing systems, cost to maintain those documents for your life period. So, you know, if you are required to keep those documents for 7 years, chances you even have some off-site storage costs. So lots of costs associated with AP. Now with PaperSave, we're going to help eliminate the data entry, we're going to automate the filing, and we're going to reduce that monthly close cycle for you. But there are lots of other areas for consideration as well, such as the financial area. What do we do with those bank statements, investment statements, journal entry backups, petty cash receipts, and so forth? If you have a sales order processing side, you know, what do you do with those customer documents such as contracts, sales orders, pick lists, delivery tickets, important correspondences, and so forth? Now, most of y'all have HR-related documents, so you know, PaperSave can also be used to help manage your I-9s and W-4s and certifications, renewal documents, reviews, vacation sick requests, and the list really goes on and on. So today we're going to take a look at PaperSave. We are going to start with the AP because that's an area that most people have in common. But we are going to take a look at other ways that you can use PaperSave beyond the world of just accounts payable. So on the screen, we're looking at kind of a simplified process. I'm sure all of y'all wish your AP process was this simple. And we'll take a look at what the PaperSave process kind of looks like. First is the capture, right? We need to make sure that we get the documents into the system. And you've probably noticed a trend over the past several years. More and more invoices are coming into your operations electronically, right? So what your vendors are doing is they're actually making you bear that cost, because a lot of times you're probably printing out those documents and then you are, you know, sending them throughout your operations for approval. Well, with PaperSave, we can monitor email accounts to bring those documents into the system. We also have Microsoft Office integration, so right from a toolbar option, a user can also add a document. And then, of course, for those documents that are coming into your operations in paper form, we can scan and get those into the system. Now, this next step of this process, this extraction, is that optional step where I mentioned that we can extract data off of the document, like vendor, date, dollar amount, invoice number, and so forth. And that is going to help drastically reduce your data entry in order to create a transaction. So information gets extracted off of the document, and then it goes to the third step of the process, and that's the approval. So the managers can receive email alerts letting them know that documents exist, and they can click a link right within the email to be authenticated and approve those documents. Now, what's nice with the OCR process is if the document has come in through a monitored email account, such as, you know, accounts payable at your domain name, and there are no issues with that document, meaning it's captured all the information, there weren't any low confidence characters, then it actually goes right here to the approval step before anybody within your operations actually needs to touch that document. Okay, so it's really saving you a lot of time because you don't even have to touch it until it gets to the last step of the process. Now, within that approval step, you can have multiple levels of reviewers. So if a document is, let's say an invoice is over $1,000, maybe it needs 2 reviewers versus 1. Well, we can set up those escalation rules so that a document comes in, and if it meets certain characteristics, it automatically gets sent to additional levels of reviewers. Now, at the end of that approval process, it will go into that integration point with GP. That's where we leverage eConnect, and we take the information from PaperSave, from our profile fields, and we create it right into GP with a click of a button in real time. And it also associates that document to that transaction automatically as well. So it files that document. Now, we follow along the process a little further. You then do a check run. Now, with PaperSave, we handle that matching for you automatically. So once that check is cut, boom, that document, that check image is matched to all of those supporting documents that were paid by that check. So that way, you don't even have to spend the time matching information. So let's take a look then at the workflow. And we're going to dive into actually take a look at the system in action. But here's a sample workflow process, and you can see on the screen every single block represents a step in the process. And in the blue header is the name of that step. Now this would always be your name for that step, and keep in mind this is just my sample process. But a document comes in, and then it goes after that automation step goes to your reviewers. And then from one level of reviewer to another, it can be decided based on an integration point and a business rule. Right? So this business rule is saying, hey, if this document is within that manager's threshold for review and approval, allow them to approve it and then send it to data entry for that final step of the process. Whereas if it's over that threshold, allow them to approve it and then send it on to that next level of reviewer. So in this case, it would go from manager down to director, down to vice president, down to executive, and so forth. All based on the way that you want your workflow to look. Now, within the world of an electronic workflow, there are lots of people who play different roles within the big process. So one role could be somebody who gets the mail in, opens it up, and says, hey, these are a stack of invoices, let me scan them. Could be somebody at the front desk, could be somebody in the mailroom. Doesn't always have to be, the accounts payable team. So there, that capture allows for users to scan them into the system. And there you can use multiple types of scanning equipment. You also, keep in mind, can monitor those email accounts to bring them into the system. And that's much more of an automated step. Now, your approvers are going to access documents from email alerts. And they can also approve from those mobile devices. So we're going to send those out on a time basis for users to get a feel of what's out there since the last time that alert was scheduled to go off. And there they can interact with the system a couple different ways. Now, process managers, you get to address the bottlenecks really before they become bottlenecks because you have insight to what's going on within the process. So if a vendor calls and need to do a little research where a document is, we can actually look in the workflow for that document and redirect the document if needed. Okay, so let's take a look at the top of this process. Now, once documents are either scanned in or are electronically inserted in, they're going to go through that automation step. Okay, so if I am the AP processor, this is going to be my starting point. I'm going to be able to come into the system, take a look at those documents that have been captured, and I can see that I've got 5 documents here that we have received into the system. Now, this step can be configured a couple ways. If there are no exceptions, meaning it's captured all of the information that you said is required, then it can send it on to the next step and out to those approvers automatically. But for today's purposes, I just have all of those documents come in here. Now, I have a couple options on my toolbar. I can hit F7. F7 is going to bring forward for me any of those low confidence characters. Okay, so for example, you can see a zoomed in portion of the document. You can see it's really not that great of a quality of a document. This period, it looks like, right? We know it's really a comma. So up here, I can come and, type in a comma, right, over that period, and you can see how it's properly formatted now, and I can confirm, and it will move to the next low confidence character out there. Okay, so if everything's captured correctly, I can confirm it, or I could also change it here as well. Okay, now F8 is going to do another step for me, and it is going to make sure that everything is valid and all of the information that we said is required, it is going to make sure that it's captured here. That way, when we get to the end of the process, we're not going to be dealing with exceptions. We're going to address those exceptions right here. Okay. Now, we didn't pick up a vendor phone number, and that's okay. We can always accept it with those warnings, and then it will go to the next item out there that it has said information's missing, and we didn't capture it, and we also said through the configuration that it's required. So here you can see invoice date. So I could come and capture that information by basically pointing and clicking. Now in this case, this invoice date is an alphanumeric date. Well, we know GP doesn't deal with alphanumeric dates. They only deal with numeric dates. So you can see when I captured that information here, it translated it appropriately over to a pure numeric date for me. Okay. Now with PaperSave, we've actually seen these invoices before. So we've already trained the system in where to find that information. Just for, let me clear all these fields, and we'll take a look at what does it look like to train the system. Where is it going to find that information going forward if it's never seen this invoice format before? Okay, so here you'll notice this template over here on the left side of the screen. This template is the information that you want extracted from one vendor invoice to another. Now the placement may be different, and that's okay, but those fields are all going to be the same. So here we can give it a key. Now this is a point on the document where information is going to be found from this point forward. So you can see vendor, it actually pulled up the vendor name right from GP in gray. Okay, and it did that because it's already detected a match. And we can even add additional pieces of information such as zip code, phone number, any of this information, so that if there are multiple vendors like Verizon or AT&T, it knows exactly which Verizon account you want to use. Okay, so now it's looking for an amount. So you can see over here any numerical value is actually highlighted for me on that invoice. So I can click that amount, right? I can come back and I can click that date. And then invoice number, I can look over here for the number. There's no PO. And then there's also an invoice description, right? So I can grab that description there. And now by hitting Control-N, this is going to basically save that information in the system. Now in this case, that was already in the system, but you know, by hitting that shortcut, it's going to save all of those coordinates for you going forward. So next time you see a invoice for Infosys, it knows where to find that information. Okay, so now on to the next step of the process, and that is the workflow. So we're going to now send these documents out to the workflow, out to those approvers by hitting this green circle and this white check mark. Okay, so those approvers, as I mentioned before, will get email alerts. Those email alerts let them know what's out there that needs their review. Okay, so here within the workflow alert, it tells me, well, what level approver am I? So I'm a director level, and I have 3 invoices that need to be reviewed. And I can see these 3 invoices down here in detail. So if I'm ready to review those documents, those invoices, I can click that link. If I'm already on the network, it is going to take me right into the PaperSave workflow because it's authenticated me based on how I'm logged into the network environment. If I wasn't on a network, maybe because I was on a tablet or a mobile device, then it will challenge me for my credentials, and I would put in my network credentials. Okay, so now I can see that that invoice. I can see any of the previous steps, so we know that this came from the manager review, right? We know that it's in the director review, and it was Tammy Bauer who approved it on this date and time. Okay, and then you can see all of that data that's already been extracted off of the document. Now, sometimes your approvers may need to provide you the GL distribution, okay? So you'll notice down here I have an area within my profile, and I can go in and code this invoice, right? So account number, oh gosh, maybe I don't know the account number, right? Maybe I want to search on it. So I want to say, hey, anything with telephone. And I can come in and put in the amount, right? And I can keep adding different rows as needed as well. Okay, so that allows me to look up right on the GP chart of accounts, not on a replicated table. You're actually looking up on the GP chart of accounts in real time, allowing a user to select it. So it's going to validate it at this point in time. So it's not that they're just typing in characters. It will validate it so that when it gets into the final step of the process, we know that we have scrubbed all of that data. We've taken care of any of those inconsistencies. We've made sure that when we push the button, it goes into GP seamlessly. Okay, now I can hit approve. Now based on this workflow, right, if I as the director can only approve up to $5,000, it would have sent it up to that VP level. Okay, so it looks back at that process map to know how an invoice needs to be handled. Okay, now if I want to skip over this or I want to reject it, you know, I could do that as well. Okay, so now we've sent documents along the way. Now if I flip forward to the next step of my process, I've named accounts payable. So let's change hats here, and let's say I am the AP person, right? I've touched the documents at the front end of the process. Now I'm also going to touch them again at the back end of the process, because here I can take a look at all of those documents. I can take a look at the workflow item history. I can take a look at that profile. I can also drop down this bottom part of the screen if I want. And then from here, if everything looks good, what I'm going to do is submit it. And that takes this document and this profile information, it creates a transaction in GP, and it files that document for me automatically. And we'll take a look at GP in just a few minutes. So the submit button is a real-time integration point. It's not a batch upload at the end of the night. It's really real-time taking this information and sending it into GP. Now before we flip over to GP, I just want to take a look at a couple other things within this workflow. Now I am in here as a super user, okay, so I can see everything. So if I want to take a look at everything sitting out there across all of my manager's hands, right, I can see here I've got 154 items out there, right? I can bring up this bottom part of the screen. Maybe a vendor called and I needed to, you know, search on that invoice. Okay, here's that invoice. Maybe I need to forward this on to somebody else because it's been sitting in David Furnish's hands for too long. Okay, so here from my toolbar, because I have the rights, I could come and change that owner. So now I can say, I'm going to take it from David's inbox, right, and I'm going to send it over to Sam's inbox. So now Sam is the owner of that document. Okay, so it transfers it over from one approver to another. So if I go back, let's see, let's come here and let's say, let's hit refresh. Now you can see this invoice had a owner change. So not only does the system track the forward progression of the document as to who approved it, who rejected it, but it will also track any time a document is redirected in the process as well. Now, redirections can be done automatically. So for example, here under options, a workflow user can mark themselves as out of the office. So maybe I'm going to be out of the office, I'm taking a little bit of vacation here, and I'm not coming back until the 20th. So I can mark myself as out of the office. I can change that ownership, so I can say, hey, at this point in time, anything that would come to me, have the system automatically redirected over to Douglas. Okay, so it's not going to come into my inbox and sit there for a period of time. It's going to come, hit it, and bounce over to Douglas. And it is going to track that as an automated change so that you know that the document was sent to Holly but was redirected over to another workflow user. Now, a couple neat things that you can also do within here. Let's come back and let's remove some of these filters. And now you can see I've got 154 items out there, right? If I want to take a look and sort ascending or descending, I can see all of that information. If I want to filter, you know, what's sitting out there in Holly's hands, right? You can see what's sitting out there in Holly's hands. You can also show groupings. So here, if I come back and let's hit refresh, and let me just go ahead. I'm going to anchor this on the screen because this is something that can float up and down. If you wanted to create groupings and drill into groupings, you know, you could do that as well. But the nice thing when it comes time for a monthly close and you're doing accruals is to export this information out to Excel. So all of this rich data can be taken right out to Excel, where then you can scrub this, and you'll notice you even have add document to PaperSave from your toolbar. So you can actually associate it right with the journal entry that you create for that accrual entry. Now, furthermore, you'll also notice in column A that you have a hyperlink available. So at any point in time going forward, if you want to review that accrual entry and you want to actually take a look at the document for Fairpoint Communications, all you need to do is just simply click that link, and PaperSave is going to launch for you and show you that document right from Excel. Okay, so that is a little bit about the analytics side of the workflow, how you can redirect things, how you can automate movements, how you can search on things. So if a vendor calls, you can easily pull it up, you could redirect it, and of course your monthly close process. Now let's flip over into GP. So far we've taken a look at, you know, the workflow and the automation with inside of PaperSave. At no point does a user have to be a GP user, with the exception of that last step where I hit create. It actually will use my GP credentials to create that transaction inside of GP. But workflow users and whatnot do not need to be GP users. Okay, so now if we go into GP and we go into a batch, right, and let me scroll down here, we can see attracted telephone and crown. Those were those two transactions that I had created. Okay, so now PaperSave's created the transaction just like if you keyed it into GP. In the lower right-hand corner, we are prompting you that documents exist. We can click that link and it loads that document for you. And you can see here, based on this date and time, when that document was created and by whom. Okay, so it's being pulled from my system time. So don't worry, for some reason my computer clock is an hour ahead of East Coast time, and that's where it's pulling from, but it's not yet 10:30 in the morning. Okay, so that's how that document gets, the transaction gets created and that document gets filed. So that one click of a button does several very important time-consuming tasks for you. Okay, now as you produce your checks, right, at the end of the process, PaperSave is going to match those documents for you. So if you go into, let's say, pull up a check in the future, right, we can take a look at those relationships, right? And those relationships are what you're going to see under Apply. Now with PaperSave, we can take a look at that extended relationship, and we refer to that extended relationship as associated. Right, so here you can see that payment. You can see those payables transaction documents. We can click to open up all of those. Here's that payment, and if I want to fit to the height, I can fit to the height, and I can scroll between those documents. Right, so we know by looking at this, this document's related to voucher 488 because we grabbed this information from GP, right, when the transaction was created. We know that this document relates to voucher 487, and this one relates to voucher 485. Okay, so it matches those documents for you. Now, it's a multi-way match, so if we went up to, let's go back up here to the top, and let's say we wanted to take a look at, and we were doing research, we need to look at this transaction, right? We could open up that document, and then I said, oh, wait, I want to take a look at that check, right? We could come here to Options, and we can show associated documents. Now here, because that association can also include the vendors and the vendor documents, we can also see here I've got a contract. So if I want to take a look at that contract right from within inside the invoice, I don't have to go to the vendor record. I can really look at it right here. And of course I can drill down to that payment as well. So it really allows you to drill down and drill around from different vantage points. Now the next thing I wanted to go into as we think about search and retrieval is the Smart List integration. So if I come back here into GP and I go into Smart List, I can create a Smart List or I can pull up a Smart List that has already been created because I've saved it. And if the auditors came in and said, hey, we want to take a look at all of the supporting documents that were coded to this account code or this account number or account range, right? We can always select, that within the Smart List. And then under Additional, once we get those Smart List results, I can show documents from a query. And what that's going to do is now pull all of those supporting documents for me for that smart list that we were just looking at. Now what we're doing is we're looking at those documents here inside my PaperSave Multiple Document Explorer. Still in summary form, right, because we're not actually looking at the content, but each row represents a document, and you'll notice here the columns help identify what record or transaction is that document related to, because this is all being pulled right from GP. So if I wanted to sort or filter this information, I can sort it, I can filter it, just by clicking on, one of these headings as well. If I wanted to open up this group of documents and scroll through them, I can do that right from my toolbar. So I don't have to open and close each document individually. The toolbar option, next document, really allows me, it does that for me automatically. If I want to print, save, or email the document, I could do it either with the document that I'm looking at or the group of documents, right, as a whole. Or another nice feature that's recently been added is using that Excel feature. So if I export this, I can export this out to Excel. Right? I can give this right to my auditor, give them temporary rights into the system, so if the auditor comes in and they want to take a look at that invoice for Fujitsu, they could just click that link and it's going to retrieve that document for them. While they do that, they can see that full audit trail around the document. And if they wanted to take a look at any of those associated documents, they could see that as well. Okay, so it's a nice way of saying, hey, based on the sampling that you're looking for, here are those documents, and then be able to provide that information in summary form over to another user, allowing them to be self-servicing. And that will help eliminate a lot of that time that's typically spent preparing for an audit by pulling the information out of those filing cabinets. Now, because we're not actually pulling a piece of paper out, there's nothing left to file, of course, at the end of the audit. So that's a little bit about the AP process. Now, when we think about PaperSave, though, it does go beyond the world of accounts payable. We have many other ways that we can get documents into the system. So let's explore a couple of those. Maybe you have a W-9 form that you need to add into the system. Maybe a contract, right? Well, we could just open up a record, create a record, and under Additional, we can add a document. Okay, so just by clicking that option, this captures a lot of data right from GP, and then I can profile a document. Now, this profile is much simpler than the profile that we took a look at for invoice automation, right, because that had all of those transactional values. This one, if I say, oh, it's a W-9 form, I can grab that W-9 form and add it multiple ways. Okay, maybe it came in via email, right? So maybe here I want to grab that W-9 form and I want to drag and drop it. So that's one way of getting it into the system. Okay, maybe I have a contract here and it's in my hand, right? So I can grab that document, I can profile it, and if I have a little desktop scanner, I can use Scan Now. Now this will call up that desktop scanner, and it's going to capture that document, and it's going to name it, save it, compress it, associate it, and convert it to a searchable PDF file for me. So we've got other search methods that we'll get into here shortly. Okay, and I can save and exit. Now also within here, if I have this W-9 form and I want to add it in using Office or Outlook, I can add the attachment, or within Outlook, I could also add the document as a whole, which would include those attachments. Okay, so if I want to add it to a vendor record, I can select vendor record from that drop-down list, and I can add it into the system another way. Okay, so instead of dragging and dropping, this allows me to come in and then search on that document. So here I'm going to show those records, right? And here's the GP vendor list. And if this was going to a vendor that starts with, how about G and K cleaning, right? I can just go ahead and add that document right to that record. So you can see that the end result is the same. It's just how do I as a user want to interact with PaperSave, right? This may be my preference. Drag and drop may be your preference. You also have the ability to scan later as well as attach a file. So just to showcase a different record type, we also have the capability to do that. It works consistently across over 70 different cards and transactions in GP. But here under additional, I can add a document and you can see those same options. So if this was a spreadsheet that I was working on, I can come out and grab that spreadsheet and bring it into the system. I could drag and drop it. I could be within Excel and hit the toolbar option. You know, the possibilities are all endless. Now what we've noticed though is by giving users the capability to interact with the system in a way that makes sense for them, it's really boosting the overall adoption rate of new technology. Because it's not counterintuitive to the way that they work inside of their operating system. We're giving them that flexibility based on over 11 different capture methods that they can use to get information into the system. Now, if I'm still dealing with paper, right, the last option available on my toolbar is Scan Later. So if I hit Scan Later, a little bit different than Scan Now, right, because it's actually called my printer window versus calling up my scanner window. And this allows me to print off a barcoded cover sheet. Now, I'll use this cover sheet when I scan the document later. Okay, so here, let's go ahead and print that to the screen so we can all take a look at it. Now, this cover sheet, this barcode, is the reference or the tool that's going to be used to associate the document that I have in my hand in paper form with this journal entry for this company, in case you have multiple companies, and all of that journal entry information, right? So that way when you take a stack of documents, it would be cover sheet, document, and so forth, it is going to separate the documents every time it sees a cover sheet, and then it will read the barcode on that cover sheet to make that association for you automatically. Okay, so that's great for a user who doesn't have a desktop scanner, who still deals with some paper here and some paper there. It allows them easily to get that information into the system. Now we have one other capture method before we get into the other search and retrieval methods called Scan First. Okay, now Scan First, if we go back to that process map, people use the system very differently. Scan First is a process that's widely used for volume. So AP entries, cash receipts, sales orders, just to name a few, where we can capture the document the same three ways, right? We can scan documents into a queue for processing. We can monitor email accounts to bring those documents in for processing, and then of course that office integration. And if you're looking for a very simple solution, right, it can go capture to integration. Now the integration works a little bit different, okay, because that integration allows you to interact with GP the same way that you do today. The difference there is we're going to present those electronic documents to you. So if I'm here and I have a whole stack of, let's say, invoices that need to be processed, right? These invoices have come into the system, and we can see that document here, and we can hit this auto button. Now what auto is going to do is it is going to auto associate the document that I have in this viewer with the transaction that I'm about to create inside of GP. Okay, so here using a dual monitor or resizing my screens like this is going to allow me to, basically do what I'm doing today. And this allows me to, for a really quick return on investment and a really quick implementation, right? Because you can still get those documents after they've been reviewed. Okay, and we can put in the transactional information, that's me keying it in, and then when I'm ready, I can hit save. Now, save files that document for me, and then it advances to the next document out there in that stack. So here I can pull up this next vendor, right, the same way that I do today. Let's let me go 525. There we go. And then once again, save. It files that document and it advances. So you can use this around, receiving transactions, sales orders, cash receipts, incoming vendor correspondences, and the list really goes on and on. So here with sales orders, if I, just show you with a different record type, we can go into the sales entry. Right, I can say I'm creating a quote or an order for some of y'all who use this area, right? We can put in any of that information, populate that batch. And then we can, create that sales order. Now here, right, once I hit save, the document gets associated and it advances you to the next document out there in that stack. So it's a very efficient way of starting with PaperSave, depending on your budget, the level of automation that you're looking for, because there, once again, you could be up and running in less than a week. And it's saving you the 20 to 30% of your time that's typically spent filing, searching, retrieving information, because it's filing it for you in real time, and then it is filed and they're available at your fingertips, right within GP as well as beyond. And we'll take a look at that in just a second. Okay, running a little short on time, that typically happens. Just a couple other things. One is you have additional search features. So you can search documents, as you saw, by drilling down from a record to the document, even to the associated documents. You have that great smart list integration. Anytime you create a smart list and you want to pull those supporting documents, you can do that very easily. Here within the PaperSave search, it allows you to search for documents different ways. So if I wanted to say, hey, show me all of my W-9 forms. Here are all of your W-9 forms, right? You can see all the vendors, and if you want to sort this or filter it, maybe you just want to take a look at all of your W-9 vendors in Illinois, let's say, you can do that. Now in that case, you were searching based on this profile. Okay, so these profiles allow you to do queries based on document level information. Okay, so think of it like, in this case, based on like classification. So if you wanted to pull out all your I-9 forms or W-4 forms or benefit renewals or contracts that expire this quarter, you can use those fields so that you can query and filter and sort and search on documents. Now you also can search for documents based on content. So if you wanted to pull all documents out of the system with a value or phrase, right, you could do that. You type that in, and here we're just searching for information that appears within the body of the document. So it's going to look at what you have rights to view first, and then it's going to show you those results. So you can see I've got vendor documents, journal entry, payables. I've even got a couple employee documents in there. Well, maybe I want to filter on employee. Okay, and here you can see those two certifications, one for Brenda Diaz and the other one for Angela. And here, when I drill into that document, you can see where it found those values, whether it's a freestanding value, it's embedded within the center of a larger string of characters, or at the end. It was still able to find that document for you. So that's what we refer to as an OCR search or a full context search, so that you can still be able to pull documents out of the system. And lastly, I know we've focused a lot within the workflow and the GP user experience, but another great benefit to PaperSave is to be able to extend it beyond GP and also give your GP users access to the system, allowing them to be self-servicing, right? So a lot of times we hear from prospects that are evaluating PaperSave, their AP team or their contracts team or whoever spend so much time pulling supporting documents for users across their operations. Now here within PaperSave Web, this is a web-based tool that allows users to drill down and pull their own supporting documents, right? So if I come here and say, oh, I have this report on, or I have this line item on my report, what is it? Right? I can add in some filters here. So maybe I know it's an invoice for Fujitsu. Maybe it had the reference of the invoice number or document number, right? And I can still drill right down into that document using my web viewer. Okay, and you can notice you've got the same feature. So if they have rights to view, to view the payments, they could even take a look at those associated documents and drill down there as well. Okay, now PaperSave can be deployed in a full web client or a hybrid, which you saw here where I've got some web components, I've got some thick client components, and we also do support the integration with the web client inside of GP. So let's go ahead and let's bring up some additional information, just kind of in conclusion. So if you're considering going paperless, some solutions out there really only focus on the AP side, and that addresses a lot of paper problems, but really not all of the paper problems, whereas PaperSave is a full enterprise-wide content document management solution. We offer a lot of flexibility in the solution because the way that you might want to work with the system may be very differently than somebody over in HR or over in legal or marketing. So they can all interact with a solution that makes sense to themselves. Now with PaperSave, we really focus on increasing that efficiency, increasing that collaboration, and most importantly, reducing those costs across your operations. If you have any questions or follow-up, please don't hesitate to reach out to your TM group account manager. Also, Allie, you probably have her information from registering for today's webinar, or of course, please feel free to contact us as well.